Hi, my name is Simon Hedley, known to my clients and partners as a strategic alchemist and an ultimate connector. I'm a chartered accountant who brings together and bridges the worlds of business philosophy, finance, marketing, optimization, ontology, and so much more. Always focused on one thing, the simple idea that can make the difference to people and projects so we can tip the scales in their favor and get them complete. Pause, Stop, Reset is all about the three little words that can make the difference. They have for me and my clients, and I hope they will for you too. During the show, you'll get to learn about my guests' real-life experiences and the insights and lessons they've learned as they've navigated the resets in their personal and business lives, which you'll be able to leverage yourself. So let's start the show. Hello, I'm Simon Hedley, and welcome to this episode of Pause, Stop, Reset. Today I'm joined by the one and only Morgana Rae. She's an international #1 bestselling author, an award-winning entrepreneur, and a seven-figure spiritual life and business coach for close to 30 years, putting love first to build wealth and impact. She's a favorite guest on television, radio, and print, and she's guided tens of thousands of entrepreneurs, innovators, healers, humanitarians to heal the rift between heart, spirit, and money to save the world as only they can. And we first connected over a decade ago, and she had a lot of grounded experience, insight, and wisdom to share with you today. And so without further ado, Morgana, welcome to Pause, Stop, Reset.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. And I can't believe that we've known each other so long. It goes by so fast.
It does. And in a way, at the time, it's really slow. And you go, we'll catch up more. And, we'll get into your exciting adventures around the world, getting married more than once, but not the way you think. But it's been fascinating. And suddenly decades go by, and it's like,
how could that be? Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
And we know that old Jim Rohn line, right? About people massively overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate the decade. And I've watched that happen twice now and gone, yeah, okay, that's happened. But we're going to get into the fun stuff, because I think the interesting bit, you've obviously been through many interesting things over your 30 plus years in this industry, in the world of contribution and transformation. For people that may not know you yet or haven't caught up with your resets, who are you and what are you focused on today?
I would say that I am known for relationship with money. I'm a pioneer in that area, and I have an approach that's very different by necessity, because I was such a dramatic failure, such a good student. I am like this walking, living, breathing example that Ivy League education and a dozen certifications and taking every business class and sales class and doing the work, having the mountains of testimonials and celebrity testimonials, like doing everything my coach said. And I was struggling to make $100 a month in Los Angeles. And you can even hear, like, there's sort of a perverse pride, like, beat that, but don't.
I'm going, wow, like, don't. I didn't know that about you. This explained, carry on, exciting.
And living in LA is like the mecca of woo. So I also was going to, like, everybody who they'd wave their hands in my face and blow in my third eye and change my money DNA, and nothing changed. Nothing changed. And I had to, by necessity, accidentally come up with my own modality, my own process of change that worked on me, that I had never seen out there before. And I had my own results really rapidly. Within 24 hours, 4 people hired me for double what I had ever charged in my life. Now, granted, at the time, I was like charging way too little. So like going from $100 a month to $200 a month was like gigantic for me. By the way, I've made millions of dollars since then, and now I charge thousands of dollars an hour. But at that time, that was huge. So I had my own experience by accident, a way of relating to money differently that I had never seen out there. There are so many programs that will like go through lists and lists of fascinating negative, beliefs about money. And, we could talk about that forever. And it'll be very, very interesting. And it doesn't change a fucking thing. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. Am I allowed to swear? I really like to swear.
Oh, you are now. This is now.
Okay, great. So anyway, in all honesty, what it came down to was I was in this pit of despair. I had just taken this my Hail Mary was just took this class on overcoming sales objections. I assume everybody listening knows what I'm talking about, but if you don't, there are classes that will teach you the magic words and cue like the woo music in the background, the magic words to say when somebody says, "Oh, I'd love to work with you, but I don't have the money or the time or whatever.
I can't afford it. I haven't got the time. I'll check with my spouse.
Right, yeah.
I'm already booked that weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody, they're the magic words. And I'm such a good student. Like I was hit by a car. I was in a coma. I was homeless my senior year of high school. My brain didn't work, and I still graduated as a national merit fucking scholar. And then went to Smith College and got a degree in religion.
I'm going again. You hit by a car in a coma. I didn't know that about you either.
I wouldn't recommend it.
No.
Brain damage brain damage for a really long time. It takes so much longer to recover than anybody will ever warn you. And I went from being a straight A student to not being able to read a page and stay awake or remember what I read, much less read subtext. So it was, and I have a drug addict, violent mother, and I had to get out of her house for my survival. So I was sleeping on a dining room floor of a friend of my father's who happened to live in the San Fernando Valley so that I could borrow their station wagon to get to school in the morning because my dad lived 20 miles south, and I had left the high school at my dad's house, which was really, really good because I couldn't keep up after the car accident, and moved to my mom's house in Granada Hills so that I could at least start not behind. And I couldn't live with my mom because it was too dangerous. So I seriously spent the senior year of high school living on a dining room floor, which was no privacy and so humiliating. And it also saved my life. Simply being in high school. And it's so weird because when I was in elementary school, I was the scapegoat. I had no friends. Everybody ganged up on me, and it was awful, traumatic, and all that kind of stuff. But by the time I got to high school, it was the high school kids who were keeping me alive and giving me a reason to keep going. I don't know how I ended up in that sort of through the looking glass reverse of all the like high school movie tropes, but the kids at my new high school were really nice, and just going to school to get grades and get out of California to go to college helped me get through that period. It also had its gifts. It's like my intuition really, since my regular brain wasn't working like it used to, my intuition really flowered, and I've been able to keep that while the injured part of my brain has had many decades to recover. So, and yeah, I still scored great on tests and managed to go to Smith College to get, that much coveted, everybody wants a degree in religion with a specialty in the most esoteric, obscure, tantric, and Kabbalistic traditions of human history. But we were talking about money, right?
Well, we started talking with what you most focused on today, and then we've covered a lot in a short time, which covers, as I said, you've had a lot of really interesting, unusual experiences that you couldn't make up.
They all come in handy. You just don't know it at the time. So for me, helping people, that is comfortable. That's like my default. Intuition, making connections, making miracles happen. I had I started out with the entertainment industry, and I had actors with no credits who were getting TV series. And I had, actors winning awards and directors selling their first movie for $1 million, which was a lot of money 20 years ago. And so I had, this pile of testimonials and people who are now household names who credit their start to me. And I was still making $100 a month. And I had taken that class on overcoming sales objections to learn the magical words to say. And I was such a good student, because that's, I think, how I got off on that tangent with the car accident and all that kind of stuff, is I'm a good student. Yeah. And I did what I was told. And I used the magic words. And 7 times in a row, I overcame their objections and they said they would hire me. And 7 times in a row, they didn't show up and they didn't pay me anything. And it was that last one being stood up that last time that broke me. It was like my last gasp of hope. I had this talent. I finally knew what I'm here to do. I was really, really good at helping people and I loved it. And I'd accrued way, way too many certifications, hypnosis and NLP and coactive coaching and on and on and on and on. And I'm still struggling to make $100 a month, which is really impressive. And in this broken, despairing, I don't even know why I bother living. I can't make a living. It's never going to work. The universe has rejected me state of being. I had a session with my coach, which is ridiculous because I didn't have money for rent and I still had a coach. Thank goodness, because it was that session. I've been working with him for months. We had actually graduated from coaching school together, but he had a business and I didn't. So I hired him to be my coach and I would do what he said and nothing would happen, which wasn't his fault. But on this one day, and I come to him in this like deep pit of despair where everything hasn't worked and I'm out of things to do. And I'm, again, a living example that you can do everything right and get crap results. You can do all of those programs that promise you results and get crap results. And I can say that because I've done most of them. But I come to my coach on this day and I pour out my heart and he asks me this weird out of left field question that I'd never heard before. And at that time, nobody was asking. He asked me, if your money was a person, who would your money be? And because I was in so much pain, and it was honestly like money was trying to kill me at that time in my life, to just crush any hope or self-worth or value or future that I had. Money felt really, really evil and cruel and dangerous. And so when he asked me that question, and by the way, full disclosure, I am a terrible visualizer. If you ask me to sit by a river, I will spend 40 minutes trying to figure out which river. But at that moment, when he asked me that question, who would your money be? I saw who my money at that moment was in that moment instantly. And I was shocked. It wasn't anything I ever expected. Money in that moment, March 2002, 20 years ago. At that moment, my money showed up in my mind's eye, real as could be, as this big, scary, dirty, violent biker dude who was violent and terrified me. And I had every very good reason in the world to want to create maximum distance between me and the biker. I knew he wanted to kill me and cause me harm. And I never, ever, ever knew that I felt that way about money. I never guessed that I didn't like money. I never knew it until I made it a person, but I had to be in that pitch of pain first. It doesn't work as an intellectual exercise. Transformation rarely works as an intellectual exercise. That's why we could spend 30 hours with checklists of beliefs about money, and it would be fascinating, but it would be mental masturbation. Transformation is a full person, full body neurological experience. And all that pain had lit up my neurology by accident. And when we dropped in that idea of, well, who would money be? And I saw this person and it was like, I could feel him and he had a smell and I saw what he looked like and I could think what he was thinking about me. And it was clear there was no way that I could have money in my life if that was the guy, the person. Suddenly, for the first time in my decades of existence, my financial situation made sense. It didn't matter what I was doing consciously or how well or how often. I was public speaking. I had a great reputation. I had a line of people who wanted to hire me. And I had such money repulsing powers that I was unaware of, that I could talk everybody out of the sale, and I didn't know that I was. I didn't know that I was pushing them away until I saw that that was my money. So it was really clear there was no way that I could have money in my life if it was that guy, and I had to get rid of him by any means necessary, which created a new problem. I live in LA, and I have just eliminated my only relationship with money. How long will that survive? So I have a new problem. I need a relationship with money, but I don't want it to be like the old one, which, if you've ever been in a really bad relationship of any kind in your life, whether it's romantic or with a parent or a friend or a business partner or a teacher, any bad abusive relationship that made you feel powerless or worthless, you know you don't want to get back into that. This is the time in the movie where I go to the hairdresser and chop up all my hair because I just had a bad breakup. I got rid of this really bad abusive boyfriend, money, my imaginary boyfriend's money, who was always telling me that I wasn't good enough.
You actually shave your hair off?
No, I did not. I did not.
Again, metaphorically, okay. I have
metaphorically.
Done that.
Sorry, yes.
Monkey myself. I have
yeah, no,
hair.
I did not cut my hair off when I slayed my relationship with money. But I have, after romantic breakups like that. I have.
Yeah, time for a reset. Yeah.
Yeah, but money was like that bad boyfriend who told me that I wasn't good enough and that I'd never do better. So I had to get rid of it and have a completely new relationship. So I asked myself, well, who could I want to have a relationship with, even if it's money? Because I was really hesitant to get back into that. And because A, I started out in such a pit of despair, and B, because the money as a person was so real. And this is important because money, for people like me, I'm a people person. I care about people. Money is an abstract concept, a very powerful abstract concept, but it's not real like a person is. I have a lifetime of experience having relationships with people. So when money became a person, money became real on a level that it wasn't just an intellectual exercise abstract concept. It really became real. And that makes it easier to eliminate that relationship because we all have experiences ending relationships. I have evolved how I end that money relationship now. It's far more dramatic than it was 20 years ago, but it was good enough at the time. So I got rid of money. I could feel this emptiness, which is not good because nature abhors a vacuum and you need to have money to live in LA. So who would this new relationship be? And I wanted it to feel really safe and really different. And so as soon as I asked myself, well, who could this new person be? In my mind's eye popped in this tall, dark, handsome, romantic young man, very clean cut, dressed in a tuxedo, carrying a bouquet of red flowers, in love with me. And you may hear kind of the shock in my voice as I'm telling the story. I'm kind of reliving it. It was so wonderful and, again, very surprising. The idea that money loved me and wanted to woo me was, again, never something that I'd ever considered. It was so weird, especially given my history with money. But this was a new person, a guy who loved me and wanted to be with me. And I also had this immediate awareness of I had been pushing him away, and I have the body. I've been the gatekeeper all this time. He's been wanting to be with me, and I've been pushing him away and breaking his heart. And I didn't want to be that person that would break his heart. You know, the whole Reddit, am I the asshole? Yes, I had been the asshole in the relationship. He had been wanting to be with me, and I had been pushing him away like a monster for all these years. So I could feel how much he wanted to be with me and how lovely he was, how worthy of my deepest admiration and trust, romantic, handsome, sweet. And I had a momentary realization that, holy heck, I have no idea how to allow money to be with me on a big scale. And I told him that. And I actually, and this is the fun thing about making money a person, is now you get to have conversations with a person who loves you and shares your values. It's none of this money monster harming people or being sacrificed or greed or none of the bad stuff. That was all part of the monster. So now all we have is this love relationship and somebody who shares my values and kind of wants to save the world the way I do. And we're partners. And so I ask him what he needs from me to be with me, which is, by the way, a very different question than what do you need from me to love me? And I'm pausing because this comes up all the time with clients. Love is unconditional. When you've slayed the monster and now you have this, and you have taken the next step to now establish a relationship with an all new relationship with money that I like to call the money honey. Rule number one of your money honey is your money honey loves you and loves you more than anybody else in the world. And that love is pure. This person loves you to your essence. And that's unconditional. Love is unconditional. Presence is conditional. You can at any time put the brakes on. You're in the driver's seat. You can push this partner away because you have the body. So I'm not inventing some money honey fairy law of attraction who's going to shower you with treasure while you sit on the couch. Although if that works for you, do what works. That's not what I teach, but do what works for you. What I want instead is for you to be fully empowered. That's what this is all about, to make money safe, because change happens at the speed of safety. If you are all out pursuing your career, pursuing making money, or finding the love of your life, or healing from some ailment, because I've done this process and successfully on all of these scenarios, if you are doing everything you're supposed to be doing and you are not getting the results that you should be getting, there's a reason. And the reason is you are unconsciously protecting yourself from the very thing you pursue. And you always have very, very good reasons. You are not a loser. You are not bad. You're not bad for self-sabotaging yourself. No, you are protecting yourself from a very real danger. Unfortunately, that protection can kill you too. So what we need to do is we need to make what you want safe, because when it becomes safe, things change very quickly and things happen that couldn't happen before. So slaying the monster replacing it with this love person makes it safe. So giving it personhood is yummy, feels very real. And now you can have a conversation. So first conversation with my money honey back March of 2000 and okay, what was it? March 2003, 20 years ago. Not great with numbers, which is so funny since I'm this money coach.
2002 earlier, and I'm also present. Morgana.
Yeah.
I didn't want to stop you on your flow, but I'm like,
sorry.
No, it's great. You're into this some of the stuff you've been sharing to help people for years, right? And you sort of you get the grounded passion about it. So yeah, it was back in 2002. I think, and it's sort of for the time and also for getting some more juice out of you, like the orange that you are. My Willy Wonka self, little joke there for myself. You've already touched on lots of resets you've been through, and this one that happened in 2002 was clearly one of the big ones that sort of changed your life, right? This reset your relationship with the money monster to the money honey and all that stuff. And I love how you've shared about it. Like, you've been to all the workshops, not really working. And and
I tried so hard. Yeah.
Being the good student, doing the stuff, whatever it may be. And it's such an interesting industry where so much of it isn't really regulated. And in the other industry, they just go to jail. But bizarrely, it's okay to make stuff up and talk nonsense. Nobody notices until too late, and then it's sort of small print. It's a fascinating stuff.
It's kind of sad because I've been here since almost the beginning of the coaching industry. I've been coaching since 1994. And there's a problem of people who have skills and talents and can really, really help, but they have no idea how to get clients. That does not help the world. And that's a problem. And so a solution to the problem that came up was learning how to sell, learning how to market online. And then what I saw was a bunch of really great coaches stopped being coaches and became e-marketers.
Yeah.
And I've had conversations with them and how much they miss coaching because they didn't sign up to become e-marketers. They started out because they wanted to become life coaches, and it just sort of went too far in another direction. The interesting thing about money is it just shines a light on our insecurities. And so then the Holy Grail was all of these guaranteed programs that will follow these steps and you'll make lots of money. And people are doing them honestly, really just because they want to be coaches and they want to be the healers and all the stuff that they want to be. But it's very easy to get taken in, especially by people who don't care about client happiness and client results as much as you do.
And there's a fine line as well. Like, you and I know the space better than most, right?
Yeah.
There's a certain bit where I can make a cup of tea for somebody. I'm a martial arts instructor and other things, but there is a certain bit where if they do the work, they can get results, but you can't always guarantee results, but you can, but you can't. So there's an interesting art science to it, right? Like in any sport, like you couldn't guarantee somebody a gold medal in the Olympics. You could coach them really well and they have a best shot. They could really go towards it. There are amazing coaching out there. But that thing about the caring, I think, is the crux of it. And there are people that have got very good at marketing, and that isn't the same as actual coaching delivery. And at the same time, expectations and assumptions. And it's a giant melange generally works through with communication. And that's a whole other conversation on the show if we get too much liability stuff going on.
You bring up a good point. A coach can't do your life for you.
No.
Which means we cannot make certain promises, but we can control what we can't control.
Yeah.
I've had years with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients. We'll never do that again. At least not the way I did.
Not the way you did last time. Yeah.
Yeah. 2007, I was touring the country with the first iteration of my book, and I was coaching hundreds of people, and I had hundreds of regular clients, and I had to keep notes just to remember who people were. I had a lot of success stories, but I was also really, really burnt out. And I did not like the feeling of having to check my notes before a phone call to remind myself who somebody is. So I promised myself I would never do that again. And I don't. My model is working with few enough people that I can know them and love them deeply. The fewer people that we work with, the more we have the freedom to pivot and personalize. I was having a coaching call with a client who I've been coaching for years and years. She's already made millions of dollars while we've been coaching, but stuff still comes up. There's still challenges. So I'm still her coach as she's evolving. And she was in a really bad place. I think it was 2 weeks ago. And I tried doing a process with her, which is a fantastic process, and it wasn't working. And it wasn't her fault, and it wasn't my fault. It just wasn't the right process at the right time. So it was like, okay, toss that aside. Let's do this instead. And we ended up slaying a new monster that was bigger than any she had ever had. We found a really, really deep core wound that went back generations that she didn't know she had. And we used that. You can't deliver that if you've got 2,000 people in your program, but you can deliver that if you have a small enough clientele that you can take the time and the care and put their needs first. For me, coaching, whatever the process is, serves the client. It's not the client who serves the process. And when you have a cookie cutter regime, the painful thing I see are all these people not getting results and being blamed because the process is king and not the client. That's a problem in our industry.
So firstly, we're going to pause, stop, reset. Secondarily, I really appreciate who you're being on the call, Morgana, for lots of reasons. it's fascinating, and this is where I think you and I got on from different angles when we first connected. And again, like, you get it. It's why I think, ironically, this alchemy word that gets misconstrued, it is a personalized process. And I love that thing you talked about just then. It's like serving the client, and it is a real service. And you can't do that with an AI. You can't do that a billion people simultaneously on a Zoom call. Some people say you can, but there's a certain aspect of really caring and deep understanding, which takes time. It can take months and years to really understand the nuance of an individual. One of the things we've definitely done on the show today has gone a bit off normal script, and that's perfectly okay. I am curious, because I know you fairly well. You do have a lot of fun as well with your partner. Do you find it easiest or hardest to pause, to stop, or to reset? I mean, I hear the strong student keeping going despite the coma, despite this stuff. I'm just curious, do you ever pause, really take time out and take like a pause or a stop? Clearly resetting you can do quite well. I'm just curious, which of those do you find easiest or hardest?
Well, my life and my focus and my center of gravity drastically changed when I met my husband. And by the way, I slayed my love monster. When I was 45 years old, I was like, again, I'm taking all the classes, I'm reading all the books, I'm working with the love coaches, and I'm single. I must have a monster. And I kept putting it off and putting it off. And I finally faced it and slayed it. And I met Devin, my husband, 2 months later. And the punchline is Devin and I are now 26 weddings deep into getting married 100 times in 100 countries.
It's one of my favorite thing about you. Just go places and get married because you can. And it's awesome.
Because we celebrate love. I have the right person. Is it always easy? Oh my God, no. But I adore him. He's my person. And the hard parts are my spiritual challenge. Part of why I picked him. But at a certain point, my relationship with him became far more fascinating to me than my longtime marriage to my career, which is why I'm really glad that I had my marriage to my career before I met him. Because you've met him. He's a very distracting person.
He runs stuff. I was there at one of the weddings, and he's a fascinating, charismatic man, and big-hearted and supportive, and it's real, which is also what's refreshing, especially in LA. No offense to LA people, but LA can be very superficial, as can London these days too.
Yeah. It can be, I'm a native of LA, so is he. So we were in LA for different reasons, than coming there to be a star. Although I tried that and failed. I believe that the only purpose for money, the only healthy, good, happy purpose for money is to serve love, lifestyle, and legacy. And when it becomes anything else, it becomes kind of a monstrous addiction that does not lead to happy results. It really just, the only reason for money is to serve love, lifestyle, and legacy. My focus, my center of gravity really became love, lifestyle, and legacy first. With Devin, with more focus on the love and the lifestyle. Legacy has always been part of my work. And then we had a pandemic. I don't know if you noticed. And I'm being facetious there. Of course you did. It's been really, really devastating. And my husband and I have lost so many loved ones. I think it's been even worse for him, of, family and close friends, and just, it's been really heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. And it really, again, shifts my values. My need to prove anything to anybody is at an all-time low. And my satisfaction and gratitude for the basics is like, oh my God, I have a home, I have food, I have health, I have love. That is wealth.
Yeah.
And the rest, a lot of the noise that you and I, Simon, see in our industry looks like insecure chatter. What really matters, and I really do think it is important to have a positive impact I do say, heal the rift between heart, spirit, and money to save the world as only you can. But it doesn't have to look grandiose. Or maybe you're in a cycle of love where it is. And the point is, we're all here to save the world in whatever expression of that it looks like. And for what you told me about your audience, when you're at a place where you're not in triage and you're not in that desperate place to just meet your bills and stay alive, and you're actually in that place where, wow, okay, life is pretty good. Now what? This is where it really kicks in to where, how can I be of service? And also, if you are at that place where you're just in the struggle, and a friend of mine and I were having this conversation yesterday about, like, we look at the struggle as this bad thing that we have to surmount. And I was just reading this quote of Joseph Campbell riffing on Friedrich Nietzsche. It doesn't matter who the people are, but I'm giving credit. At a certain point, it's really, really powerful to, as I think Nietzsche would say, love our fate and look at the challenge as exactly what we need, because that changes our relationship to it. Oh my God, the world is a shit show. This is what I need to create a new monster to slay that and up-level myself, evolve myself, get my next message, get the fuel that I need, whatever it is, whatever modality you use. We don't have to wait until our life is together to start saving the world. I think this is the Buckminster Fuller describes human beings as problem solvers. This is what we are. This is why we live. This is what gives us meaning, especially when we're struggling. It's even more important to have a meaning to your life. That's the scariest thing about discouragement and despair and feeling rejected and feeling powerless and hopeless and scared, is we feel like our lives are meaningless and we have no agency or worth, which is all the more reason to not wait, to do good and find meaning and use the pain and the bullshit as a catalyst to change and transform your own relationship with yourself and your existence and your relationship with the bigger world.
Firstly, a lot of really good stuff there. I do want to go through a bit more of our normal questions to get that sort of, because some of the listeners, no, but not in a bad way. It's all good. It's all exciting. And I'm going to keep this bit in, I think. This is the fun bit, James. You can choose that one. James is our magical editor man that makes the shows make sense.
Okay.
As I said in the intro, you've had extraordinary stuff you've been through, and you get the depth of reality and heart driving what you're talking about, right? 100%.
Yeah.
And I go back to my pausing Morgana is quite hard, right?
Sorry.
No, apologize. It's part of what we're looking at, right? I think you reset well. I think you stop well. I think pausing and taking a time out is probably what the COVID lockdown gave you, was a sort of, actually, I need to stop for a while. We can't do stuff. And it is that reassessment of values in that process. I'm curious if we can keep it sort of condensed. If we we can send back sort of 3 minutes to your younger self, like your 18-year-old self, your 20-year-old self, whatever that may be. Like, what?
Can I say something quickly about pausing during COVID?
Go ahead.
In February of 2020, I shut everything down. I canceled my retreat. I even canceled my online stuff. I just shut everything down because I knew it was going to be bad. And I could not, for myself in good conscience, be selling a future that I didn't know if we had. I didn't know who was going to be alive. And I took it really hard, and I just shut everything down, and I retired for 1.5 years. And what I learned is I fucking hate retirement. I am miserable if I'm not coaching. So I had to pause, and I learned that about myself. And yeah, there was that value shift to wealth is not the big boat. If you want the big boat, go get the big boat, have fun. But wealth is really quality of relationship, quality of life. If you have a home and food and health and love, you are wealthier than somebody who may have billions of dollars and is miserable. So my whole success metric really changed dramatically.
I'll see if I can find it afterwards, but you might already know it. The Bob Marley interview where somebody says, like, are you wealthy? And he sort of, there's a real, like, what do you mean by that? Like, it's a bizarre question for him. From where the interview is asking, it's like, how many Rolls Royces do you have? And it's like, that's not how I value wealth. And 100%. And partly why I'm really glad we're talking today is, despite knowing 10 years, we haven't had meeting up once a month for lunch for 10 years because of logistics of time and priorities or whatever else it may be. That's the thing I found really challenging, because while we have these wonderful, rich international relationships, thanks to social media and previous traveling, partly with lockdown and partly this reality of the world we live in, it's really hard to have these international deep relationships where you can be there when somebody's going through a bad time or a good time, or simple moments of quality. Now, that said, you and I don't need to talk every day to sort of get back into a rapport, because we know who we are and we like who we are. But that's one of the most fascinating bits, I think, of the modern world, because, you know, historically, you'd live in the same area. You'd have close family in the area and friends in the area. Now, everybody is a bit more travel-y, or some people are. So that relationship that I found most challenging, partly when we couldn't go meet, and then secondarily when, even if I spent 6 months in LA, knowing you might not be back for 2-3 years. It's a very interesting thing. I love how you talked about not knowing that the future that you were building into was a real future. You know what I mean? That sort of, knowing what's going to be. So we are in this interesting time around that stuff. So no, I love that you shared it. I think it's good. And again, I'm glad we're talking. It's one of those things of, I must admit, I've always been slightly in awe of you. You're slightly daunting. Well, no, you're a daunting individual. You're very clear and certain, which is refreshing, right? And you don't suffer fools lightly as well, which is a great, as you can hear in this recording today. No, it's good. So what I was going to before the interjection, and not a bad thing, it's perfect. This is the whole nature of pause, stop, and reset. You see, back in the flow. What's the lesson or lessons, the short one, and it might just be the stuff you've already talked about, but what do you wish you could send back to that younger Morgana?
I wish I could have given her evidence that things would turn out okay. And more than that, that she was okay.
Yeah.
Because maybe somebody was telling me, but you don't really believe it.
And the more they tell you, the more you go, you've no idea, you've no idea, you're wrong. And it's actually usually worse. The more they get, it'll be fine. Trust me, it'll work out. Yeah, it doesn't help usually.
Oh, but that wasn't what I was getting. It was like around, between 16 and 18 was so painful. What I was getting instead, and this actually is kind of part of why I am the way I am as a coach. Like, I may sound very woo-woo and magical to you, but I come from like really deep wounds of a mother in 12-step programs and all of her friends telling me that my head injury was, I needed to turn it over to God, and that all of my suffering was because I wasn't spiritual enough. So there was this blaming of the victim that I got a very deep experience of at a very young age. Yeah. That I'm really, really passionate about rejecting as an adult.
Yeah, I won't say her name, but somebody very close to me, she's just lost her sister to cancer and comes from a very religious background, where there would have been people saying, well, that's because of this. It's like, yeah, you need to leave me alone now. It's like, that's not really the helpful input. And if that is your point of view, you're valid to your point of view. This is not a changing your point of view conversation, but I'm with you. There's a certain bit of that blame and pointing, which isn't necessarily useful or helpful. It's like false causality stuff in logic flows. I jumped on it. It's a sore subject for me, but one that I've watched too many people utilize in the sort of the culty side of the conversations, where it's like, well, you haven't had your 3 spinach juices today, have you? You've eaten food. It's done. It's like it becomes very blamey versus, let's just, like you say, that real wealth of we're okay and move forward. And it's also slightly dangerous, right? That's part of the nature of the industry of you can manifest stuff, but this weird line, it's like saying, a bad accident, a war happening, an earthquake is your individual fault, sort of the false psychosis that can go on in that space.
the Ukraine war is because you were vibrating low, you had low vibes.
I was trying to keep the name out, but 100%. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I hope that the coaching industry will kind of the pendulum will swing a little bit more back into what I consider the coaching direction. And if any of you are like, you have a friend who's in pain or you're a coach yourself, I believe the most healing, positively impactful thing that you can do is create a space where a person can pour out their pain to you and your response is, oh my God, that's terrible. And simply validate their experience. And I think people are stuck in pain for years and years because they're screaming their pain and nobody is listening. Nobody is believing them. It's being rejected, so they can't stop screaming it. It needs to be received so it can quiet down so that then we can move on when the experience allows you to move on. And sometimes it'll be in that moment of, oh my God, I've finally been heard. And sometimes it takes more than that to, again, change happens at the speed of safety. We hold on to the grudge or the trauma or the pain to protect ourselves. When it is safe and we can know and trust that we will never allow that to happen again, that state doesn't happen when you're in the middle of the abuse or the trauma or the situation. You need distance from it. So be the person who goes to, when somebody gives you the honor of sharing their victim experience with you, which is a sacred share, go, oh my God, that's horrible, and really validate it. That's maybe even go deeper than that. That's what starts to like unlock the knot so that then there's flexibility to move beyond it. But again, you never ever push. The moment you push and there's resistance, you've gone too far and you need to just pull back and allow a little breathing room and make it safe again, make them heard. And that incrementally you can pace and lead and move somebody out of where they were stuck.
The safety thing, I love that. And for so many reasons. One of the things I found most fascinating is how, in theory, easy it is to find safe spaces to share, but also how most of the spaces that you think would be safe aren't in a hyper-connected world.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Especially when it's business related as well. Nobody wants to tell their dirty laundry in public. One of my old mentors was like, Simon, if you walk through dog poo, you don't run around going, I've just walked in dog poo, dog doo-doo it. Oh, what a shame, in the house. No, you just clean your shoes up and go on with it. So it's a really fascinating space. And as we've seen all too often in some spaces, the pain sharing gets used against you later on in conversations. So this ability to have really safe spaces with trusted partners where it's not being used as a button pusher thing. And I couldn't say it better myself. It's one of the things I've done for other people, but it's really hard to have people where you can share those things, because often now there's such cultural sensitivities for how relationships should be, how family matters should be, how finances should be, how academics should be, how bodies should be. There's all this stuff that makes it quite hard to find safety. So the reason I went down the alleyway a bit is if somebody's listening and going, I really love what I just heard and would like to sort of explore that, how do they find people? I'm going to what you shared. People that have been hurt often find the wrong people again. Does that make sense? It's not always easy to find actually good, healthy spaces where they can start to melt those knots.
I would say proceed slowly. When you're looking to be rescued, it's almost like you're putting out a scent for all the sharks in the water. I like to say that your victim experience is sacred. I do actually believe that it's a huge source of power because it's a catalyst for transformation. It also creates a softness in you that can respect and be there for the pain of other people that you can't have when you have the hard happiness and hubris of, I've never been hurt.
I live in it's all wonderful. Yes, come on. Just work harder. Come on, you can do it too. Yes.
That was me before my car accident. Yeah. I had other pains, but the one of not being able to have a working brain was something I had total insensitivity to like what homework might be like for somebody else. I didn't know until I had my car accident. So that softened me and gave me a respect for human experience that I didn't have before. That's why we have, I believe, if we're going to get cosmic or philosophical about it, that we have these experiences because they humanize us so that we can respect and the experience of other human beings and have some empathy. But we don't want to live there. So I would say, don't hand your power over to somebody else, but find the people who make you feel, just follow the safety for one thing, trust yourself, trust your resonance.
Like you said, go slowly, don't jump into. I met this person at coffee and I'm on a 9-month silent retreat with them in somewhere in Africa. And you're like, well, what? Sorry, like that. Now there is time when you have to jump into things, right? But there is a bit of be intelligently slow and notice that your radar might be off. I'm trying to keep it light because it's a very interesting space. Somebody I went to 2 days ago, she was going through one of these resets over lockdown, found somebody that you would know or know of, bought into their stuff, and as soon as they mentioned what they'd been through, I knew exactly who they were. Like, I got the name in two questions. It was like, yep, get that, as you call it, a shark. Not even my friend Tom calls him an enlightened shark. No, this is just somebody that sees humans as walking wallets, has no interest in really. It's like, yep, you put the 100 grand on your credit card, bye, and off you go.
Okay, now I know who it is.
Oh, you can guess, right? It's like one of those.
So by the way, if you hire the wrong person, I have done that so many times and I'm still here and I have a great life. So you can survive hiring the wrong person.
100%.
And then it becomes part of your learning and you know what your values are and what you won't do and what doesn't work for you. And you know how to spot the red flags next time. And it's okay. And
this is just becoming a human adult, right? We don't live in a world Disney and softballed and it's a really fascinating conversation. And look, if you're not hearing simple do this, that's probably a good thing because actually it is a bit fascinating. But underneath it, what I'm hearing you touch on is feeling into your process, feeling into your safety, and proceeding with that journey in a way that works for you. And that's really good because you can find safety in yourself, right? You can go, okay, can I take a breath now? Can I take a step now? And you can sort of reassess yourself and rebuild yourself.
What is your next step? That's always the best question to ask. There are formulas everywhere. At this point, you want to learn how to build a email list, just Google it. And you'll get as good as you would probably pay for. In terms of information.
ChatGPT today. It's like, hello, ChatGPT, how do I do this?
Yeah, exactly. Which, by the way, that's a very interesting situation. It makes information and information products, I guess, less valuable, and it makes the coaching and the personalization and customization more valuable.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like going their recipes, but which is a good one to actually have. And there's that wisdom experience that's come through the hard lessons, right? There's the old, how do you get this great experience, this great skill, this great wisdom? It's usually lots of hard work and lots of bad experience.
Well, it's like a cookbook or studying with an actual chef who has you taste everything and know the difference.
100%.
Yeah.
This is again,
metaphors are us, Simon.
.com. My old me. So I've got thousands of names to get rid of or sell or monetize. But what I'm enjoying is we're having more of an alchemic show, right? And I'm going to go there, then go forward. When you call it alchemy, right? What does that mean to you? Why was it financial alchemy? What was the alchemy piece when you talk about it?
Well, this goes back to, being a weirdo, intuitive person who got a religion degree in obscure mystical religious traditions from Smith College. So what I love about, so I can geek out on this stuff forever, but I'm not going to do that. What I love about alchemy, part of it is, remember when I was talking about the pain of being told, well, you're suffering because you're not spiritual enough. Blame, blame, blame.
Your fault. You didn't do the candle thing 3 times every day and move the rocks properly. Yeah.
Yeah, you're vibrating low. That's why we had an earthquake. Alchemy instead makes those low vibrations and those life experiences, whatever they are, useful. So instead of blaming you for whatever that was, and a teacher of mine named Christopher Howard, a friend of mine for like so many decades, and he says something that I really like, which is, it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. And that feels so happy to me. Whatever that is, you did the best you can. You did the best you can. And we're not gonna make this about blaming you or make it your fault, but you're alive. So you can respond and we can use it and make it work for you. So for me, alchemy, traditionally, it's the transmutation of lead into gold. And when we're talking lead in human experiences, the heavy stuff. And that is the fuel that makes your dreams possible. That's what we turn into the spiritual and material gold. For my own marketing, I have hundreds and hundreds I got another one last night from somebody who did my work 10 years ago and it's still working for her. And she's, just had a $25,000 month and she's a healer and all that kind of stuff. So there's the material gold, which is again, useful for marketing. But what it's really about is honoring the lead, honoring whatever hell you've been through and saying, you don't have to go through it again. You've already paid the price of admission. Even if you have worked on it and healed it 1,000 times, if you can milk it for any juice that you can use now, then do so. You've already paid for it. Let's make it the gift that keeps giving in a good way, like a slingshot. So alchemy, we go into the lead first. We're going into the wrong direction first. And like a slingshot, that creates tension and it lights up your neurology so that when we catapult you to the other side, you've got that leverage and that momentum. If we're just in neutral in the middle, really hard to have a breakthrough from meh. It's not lead, it's not gold, it's kind of mud in the middle. So yeah, I love the history and mythology and all the doodads around alchemical traditions. But what this is actually is alchemy. It really follows the formula of transforming lead and transmuting it into a golden life experience.
I like that. And it's different perspectives, and some I resonate with and some that are different. And at the same time, hopefully what you're hearing is there are possibilities out there in the world you may not have come across and connections you wouldn't know. Like, it's funny you mentioned Chris. Never actually saw Chris live. He's one of those people, I was around people that worked with him for decades, but never met him. And sort of the fascinating realities we live in these days. I didn't know Chris was a good friend of yours. That's a fascinating world.
There are a lot of stories about him, and it can be a little polarizing. I think he's a great teacher. I've had great experiences with his work, so I will always have a fond spot for him.
Well, I think that's one of those things also. It's like, don't confuse the teacher and the teachings. Rachel, who's been a big part of my world the last few years, working with her as a strategic alchemist, her secret weapon, as she says, her Yoda character. She's a big fan of nature trainings, nature experiences.
Yeah.
And Lichen that sort of can be in a toxic environment that should be killing them, but it actually benefits them. Does that make sense? So this isn't about Chris being bad. It's just saying, out of the entire space, all you can really do is trust your experiences. And that's even, for relationships, your partner works for you, might not work for somebody else. We all have good days and bad days.
Or he wouldn't have been available. Yeah, I didn't have any bad experiences with Chris. If I had, I would not be naming him.
Well, maybe
I have other
one day.
Yeah. And there are lots of great teachers out there, and a lot of teachers that I would say, well,
Yeah, we call it not touch with the barge pole in the UK. We're less polite, but it's also one of the challenges. This is an unexpected show in lots of ways. often there's multiple sides to conversations, and who somebody is today may not be who they were in the past. And sometimes it gets really confusing because we're all human. I've had one or two people say they're the most enlightened people on the planet. That's usually a sign to run away.
Yes.
You have no idea who I really am. You're like, okay, bye. No, but it's a fascinating bit. And this is where I go back to that comment you said earlier. As you proceed at the speed of safety, go slowly, go at a pace that works for you, and don't go too crazy as you start on your reset. Although you're welcome, this is not business advice, this is not accounting advice, this is your life to choose how you do what you do. It's just some perspectives for you, as we say.
Can I insert something that just
Go
came
ahead,
up really loud for me?
Well, you go. Yeah.
Oh, gosh, I'm just the most long-winded guest. I'm sorry, but
No, it's great. I'm loving it.
Here's something really, really important when you hire someone to help you. Hire somebody who respects you, who really genuinely respects you and cares about you and listens to you. The moment you have a coach or a trainer or a healer who tells you that you're wrong or you don't know what's best for you, leave. No one knows you better than you know yourself. And to me, a really, really big red flag, no second chances, is any coach or healer who disrespects you.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I was around a lot of the some of the quite strong therapeutic models, you know what I'm pointing at, back in the day, when it used to be they deliberately just be in your face and call you an idiot for like 10 minutes or an hour or 3 hours or a day or a weekend, which is really interesting. It's like we're breaking you down to rebuild you army style. You're like, yeah, but no, it is. And it's something about being willing to say, I'm out. I was at an event in London about 2 months ago. Not a transformation event, just a normal thing. But I was very clear I was not being respected. And everybody was saying, leave. I even texted my friend, like, I want to go, but I'm not leaving. I'm not sure why. And it is that bit of, and it worked out for various reasons in different ways afterwards. But there is that bit of literally going, you are valuable, you're enough. And at the same time, that you can have a disagreement, but not be made wrong. Does that make sense? And I think that's where it gets really interesting. There's a whole space of to be certain in the inquiry of a conversation, as opposed to, no, there's no such thing as Facebook.com. It doesn't exist. It's like, it does. No, you're wrong. It's like, no, you just don't know about some stuff, right?
I don't know if you know Jesse Corin, since we're dropping names now.
I do.
I love him. He's one of my favorite coaches and coach trainers. He's been a client of mine. I've been a client of his. And one of the reasons I love him is his approach when somebody in an audience, because he's fantastic on stage. Like, he's one of those people, he starts to sell and I'm like, will you just shut up and give me a number? I don't care what you're selling. Here's my check. Because I like him so much. But what he does that I really love, that so jives with my value system, is if somebody comes up and they have a problem with something he did or said, his agenda is how to make them right and himself right and the situation right.
Love it. Yeah. It's how you build, by the way, what we call raving fans for life when you do that. It does require, but it does. It actually, weirdly, some of the worst things that can happen can turn into the best relationships if you can handle that the way you described so eloquently. It was lovely.
And that he makes the client right, but he also doesn't trash himself in the process, that he finds this sort of transcendent way to make everything right. Is that creates safety, that creates yumminess. That's very rare.
And I'd be multitasking. This is Jesse and Charla from Thrive Academy. That Jesse?
Yes. Absolutely.
I'm a very bad non-detailed person. I know the name, don't know the surname, and know of again. But I love that you said that. And this is where you sort of get right how you find your journeys through. You might hear a name or a book and recommendation. Ask your network, get some feedback, and then take those steps to move you through it all. And I love that little nugget there. And this is good. This is where the juice is, and we are covering lots of interesting things, right? And
you're looking for your help. Again, like when you're deep in that victim experience and you really need help, that's that kind of dangerous time where somebody can come along and promise you the world and not deliver. I would approach hiring a coach like dating and just assume that a lot of them are not going to be your person, and that's not your fault. And you don't need all of them. You just need a healer or a helper who is your person, who thinks you're the cat's meow, even if you're a mess. And that's how you find your person.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned, my brain's going, why would somebody think it's their fault when it's not a match? That's fascinating. And this is where you get different beliefs.
Because a lot of coaches will tell you that it's
no,
bad.
I mentioned the dating model, right? My first business coach that got me to pay him was very much that. It's like, well, if you're not ready to pay me, then you're not ready, then bye. And that completely messed my brain up.
Because that's taught, and that's taught by, and I know a specific coach who teaches that. And I've been in masterminds with coaches complaining that their clients don't do what they're told. That is a coach's fault, not the client's fault.
I think, and this is, I love getting to the coaching. Part of what I found funny was I had, without realizing it, access to extraordinary coaches growing up. One of them is a guy called Professor Peter Froelich. He was a fencing coach. He came from Hungary. He helped teach me foil and saber. I trained to national level. He trained the British Olympic team years later. Like, he's extraordinary. The kind of person that could have done international sport at basketball, football. Like, he wasn't just the good guy. He was like, he was my Yoda in fencing. That coaching experience with him was like better than Mr. Miyagi. You know, it wasn't that side of the thing, but it was, you can hear now, 25 years later, changed me in a positive fashion. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
It took me from there to you can't see my hands. It took me from good to great in record time. I had similar with Catherine Allen, my Tai Chi instructor who passed away a few years ago. Extraordinary relationship with somebody for 25 years. And it was only when I met the world of business coaching and I asked the business coach who I ended up hiring, who was an award-winning training, businessy coaching of a certain business coaching franchise. I'll say no more for legal reasons. And I said, great, I need some accounting software. Which one? And his answer was, I can't tell you which one to recommend. Which one? How do you think you could find it out? It's like, now, that made me think that was what coaching was for a long time. And then thankfully, my friend in America is like, no, that's just him being an idiot. But there's different models of coaching, right? About mentoring, coaching, counseling, these different flavors and names for fundamentally helping and making a difference. Even the word helping in our industry often gets challenged. Like, I help people. You can't say that. It's not specific enough. It's like, well, and as I said earlier, there's people who are great at coaching and making a difference, and they're great at people at selling and being well known. And often the people who are, there's a balance where there are some amazing people who aren't that well known, but they're great at what they do. I'm actually quite happy about that. And often the people with 10 million views on their YouTube channel are playing a very different game necessarily. I don't know. I got my little. No,
that doesn't make them a coach. That makes them a good marketer. And coaching and marketing are different skill sets.
Yeah.
I think you can slip coaching into marketing. I try to, like me being on your podcast. Okay, that's marketing, but I'm also trying to slip in as much coaching and help as I can along the way.
Yes, which is where we're juicing you like the orange, and you're serving, and we talked about it, and we're being real. And if you weren't, I'd stop the call and we wouldn't put it out. And that's me gatekeeping my grade A and quality. How do you put it? Me being the gatekeeper for what I think is useful from my experience, which is not really accurate. I think it's also funny because sometimes, like that lovely movie Hitch, sometimes the advice you think that is the advice that will help isn't the advice they pick up. It's something else that goes on.
Right.
And that's fun and games. I'm enjoying this. This is fun. I'm curious, which books and movies have you most enjoyed on your little resetty journeys? When you've been going through your navigations, good days, bad days, sideways days, what are the books and movies that have most shifted you, made the difference for you?
Okay, so I've been reading lots of non-fiction biographies of the founders of the United States, which has been really fascinating. But I think that the two books that have impacted me the deepest, one was I finally read the Satanic Verses that came out when I was in college, and I just finally read them this year. Whoa, like the best quality writing in my life. The beginning, it was kind of hard to get through because I was so overwhelmed by the poetry of it. And then at some point you just start in, then you're just kind of on the tail in the story and you get the rhythm of it. And it was just really
And
Fantastic.
confession, never read it because when it came out, there was such a backlash about it.
Right.
And
I
all I
remember.
thought was the backlash. And it wasn't until a few years ago when something happened with me in New York that I actually what was this about? So when you mentioned it, I'm sort of going, interesting. And it wasn't the book I think it was. So really interesting that you read that and got that from it. That's
Yeah, the book is like, I remember, I think, hearing about it in 1989 or
yeah.
thereabouts. And the topics are still so timely, and it's told in such a weird and unique way. And it's so gorgeously poetic and funny and weird. So highly, highly, highly recommend. And also, I received a pre or an advanced copy of a novel by Ariel Ford. She's never written a novel before. She's written dozens of personal development books, and especially books on love. And she's a dear friend of mine and one of the top relationship coaches. And she wrote a book called The Love Thief that I read over the weekend. And it was such a healing journey that I could feel through my whole body reading the book. And that I don't recall having that experience reading a book before. So I'm plugging her book, The Love Thief, coming out, I think, June 2023 or so. Really surprising. Completely, I've not had the experiences of the heroine, but the healing experience, and it's so easy to slip into it vicariously and feel like you're in India. Totally recommend that book.
Love it. And unexpected, which is this is the joy of life. This is why some people it was video, but you wouldn't really get it from seeing me on camera, I don't think. I get a buzz that you're that like I know you enough to know you're not putting that on going, I really enjoyed the book. It out of my coffee experience in the morning. No, there's a genuine lit upness to humans, to us, when we share that way.
No, I wallowed in the book. I really, really enjoyed it.
Aaron, we're recording this. Morgana Rae says, yes. No, and that's the fun bit, the sharing. That's the joy of it. It's interesting. I'm going to go to the deep, heavy question. One of the things in the world for people listening in is relationship, whether it's friends, family, intimate partners, husbands, wives. That whole relationships today seems more complex than ever. And this fascinating mess of jealousy and not jealousy and trust in a smorgasbord world of, the people growing up with infinite dating apps. There'll be a chat GPT auto swipe device very soon, I'm sure, that will do all that for you, to book you out. It's a fascinating space. And I'm just curious, out of your rich experiences, any tips, insights for those? Because we live in a world of very different options on the menu of life today. Do you know what I mean? And wanting people to be free. We don't want necessarily, my mum was a fascinating woman, grew up with polio, everything else. Wow. She never had you have to be the housewife at home and put the kids, because she was a GP and worked really hard to take care of us. So that model's never mine. But in the sort of options in the world and the different cultures, there's all these options for how people should be and relationships should be. And I'm just curious if people are challenged by that, any wisdom or nuggets you've got, given you mentioned The Love Thief, and it has me knowing that love is one of your passions as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's been, my primary search since I was a little child. I think some things it takes time to figure out when we're young. Movies and books really don't give us a blueprint for a healthy relationship. And I think there's the fun and the romance and the excitement, but real love is different, because it's that love when you've been together for a long time and you choose and adore each other and focus on what you love, even when it's when you really know who the person is, and even worse, they really know who you are. So what I would say, and this, I think women are told to settle a lot, as if we don't have any options or we are going to outlive our shelf life. And I think that the world has dramatically changed. So I can speak to the experience of being a woman more than men. I did ask online recently, are men told to settle? And I heard back, yes, but differently,
If
not
you're
as
not a
much.
billionaire or six-pack guy that's 6 foot with fancy hair, you're told like, be happy, be grateful, you ugly monkey. So that's just reset mode.
Yeah,
A little bit
the
different.
dangerous thing when women are told to settle is we're kind of being told to settle for somebody who isn't nice enough to us or isn't actually
That's
what
not-
we need or want.
No.
I don't think we do anybody any favor by settling for what we don't want.
So one of the challenges I think also is we don't necessarily know what we want until we've had it. I don't mean like a one night stand. I mean, sometimes you don't know that depth of intimacy and relationship until you've been through 2 or 3 years with somebody.
Mm.
Those depth of experiences when you are actually committed to a thing, and it is this connection conversation that goes on between people in business. It's all very easy to go, this isn't working, I'm out, and never get to the point where you've worked through the challenging bits to get to the good stuff. I don't think there are that many Disney relationships. There can be, and there's definitely easier stuff when people have done the work on themselves and come more authentic, more real. But I think there's also this space of a really confusing thing about what actually somebody is, who they really are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I've had friends who've gone through the bad divorce and then they go to the penduluming, you know what I mean? They pendulum from left to right, from this to this, from vegan to carnivore, trying to find who they are, but actually none of that is who they are. It's just trying to get to the place where they find who they are. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I had a number of relationships that I hung in too long because I have always wanted to be in a partnership. I feel the most myself. I'm happiest when I'm in a partnership. And that doesn't mean that's right by a long shot. It's just, I've known that about myself for a very, very long time. I would stick in partnerships that were really, really toxic and abusive for too long because I had this idea that relationships aren't easy and I should work it out.
Yeah.
So, and then I had a friend who said, relationships are hard, but they're not supposed to be that hard. And she was somebody who was happily married for several decades. And that was such a relief to hear that it wasn't my failure. It was just, I was with an active alcoholic and that's what he was. And that's what I was going to get with him. And that was not where I belonged. So it's kind of wonderful that we have, I don't know about AI with dating apps.
But I was being facetious, like the Tinder swiping, right?
Yeah, but it could happen. I don't know. But what I did like about the whole notion of dating apps is that I got to get to know the person's thought and expression and communication before meeting up with a hot guy and throwing all judgment out the window. So I became really, really good at being ruthlessly honest with myself. And I would go on these dates and people let you know who they are really, really quickly if you listen and you don't try to ignore the red flags. And so I became very, very good at recognizing red flags. And I was a one date wonder for many, many years. And every guy that I met, it was like he would have, when I was really honest, he would have an expiration date. And it might be this date or it might be in 3 months or so. But it was clear that for whatever reason, this was not my person. And maybe we're just meant to hang out and have a good time for a little while. When I met my husband, he didn't have an expiration date. He felt different. He felt safe. I didn't feel like I had to put on a show. And as we dated and dated and dated, and I learned more and more of his secrets made him a better match for me. Things that would make him really wrong for somebody else made him really right for me. So I would say the wonderful thing about these apps is you have an opportunity to meet with a person based on who they are and common interests and ideas and values before it becomes a chemistry experiment because they're cute and you have feelings. You can go into it more slowly. It's not as location specific So you can actually, just like you and I, Simon, we can be friends on opposite side of the planets because we're kindred souls. Maybe not geographically convenient, but we're choosing based on essence instead of proximity. And that's, I think, actually a pretty cool thing. We have choice.
That's a good place to pause, stop, and reset, I think. And again, what I'm hearing is this: there's an underlying theme with you of it's not your fault, how you are is okay, and being with that process differently and shifting that and softening that and taking input from others in the way you see what's possible and being open for those, the difference in the sensations, of the feelings, of the experiences, and that safety thing again and again and again.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that, I'm very happy with my own company, and I also prefer having conversation with other people. I prefer being around others. And I definitely spent decades with people that every fiber of my being was going, don't be here, don't be here. But there seemingly wasn't other places to be. The same in my banking career. I loved working in banking and I didn't want to be in banking. Does that make sense? So you do get sort of stuck in the comfort zone of, well, how do I get out of this? And that can be quite challenging, especially when things are somewhat workable, but also bad on the bad days.
Well, the great thing about getting older, the gift is, for me, starting when I was 40, was I had this sudden awareness of, well, I have less time on earth. I need to waste less time in unhappy relationships with the time I have left. When we start to be aware that our time is limited, we value it more, and that improves life.
We're going to go into a slightly different question, which is when you went through your most challenging pause dot resets, right? You touched on some of them. What helped you navigate it? Because those dark nights of the soul, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, financial stress, navigating those challenging resets can be really hard. I'm just curious, what helped you get through your biggest, your most challenging pause dot reset moments?
Well, having been here before helps. The more times I've been down that road, the more experience I have that, oh, this is what happens before I up level, before I have my breakthrough. So that can actually even invite a little bit of curiosity in the midst of the pits of the despair and everything sucks and I'm deep in grief. And that happens. And it's too painful to get out of bed in that place. What helps is that I know I've been here before. So I know that I come out of it. And I learned about 20 years ago, training in a modality called coactive relationship coaching. I don't know if it's called that now. Actually, it's called organizational and relationship systems coaching, which is much harder to say. But there I learned this concept from a couple of women who had been therapists for decades and were adapting it for coaching. And they talked about how it is a universal human experience where we have this moment where we've been striving and working and everything seems to be fine. And then suddenly out of the blue, it's like the rug has been pulled out from under us and we've fallen through a trap door into a dark dungeon of existential despair. And the moment we're down there, it feels like we've always been there. It feels very familiar. Every other time we've been there comes back. And it's like all of our failures and bad experiences show up and they're having a cocktail party in our face at our expense. And my teachers called this a realm. I don't know why. But the characteristics of it is it comes on really suddenly, like the rug has been pulled out from under you. It feels familiar. And the third characteristic is none of your tricks for coping and feeling better and getting back on your feet, nothing works. And that's how you know that you're here, is like all your personal development, good life habits, none of that shit works at this moment. And what's going on is this is actually a really awful, but really healthy dynamic a psychological dynamic in which you're essentially taking a vacation from hope, because hope consumes a lot of energy. And sometimes we need to, pause, pull, and reset from life and drop down into this dungeon and stop hoping and stop trying. And while we're down there, and the big trick is stay alive while you're down there, because it's temporary and it will release itself. And when it releases, something in you heals. Something down there while you've been in misery was working itself out subconsciously, but you needed a break so it could work things out. And when you come out, you are in a better, stronger, more resourceful state than you were before. Even if you felt happy-go-lucky before, now you have new tools, new insights, new resources, and you come out better. Knowing that, when I'm in there, knowing what it is, knowing that I've been here before and what came out of it on the other side helps me when I drop back into that place.
Wow. I've not come across that. What do you call the place? I recognize that place. I've been in that place more than once. What's the label for that in that process?
They called it a realm, which might be a psychological label.
So
I prefer to call it a deep, dark dungeon of despair.
Yeah, that seems about right. I love that third bit. You're like, none of your usual tricks work. It's like, I have a coffee, it's not working. Ultra movie, it's not working. And you know it's not working, and you're stuck, and you're stuck, and you're stuck, and you're stuck. And
your coach is throwing her best tricks at you, and it's not working because nothing is supposed to work at that moment.
Interesting.
But knowing what it is, and knowing that you've been there before, and knowing that it releases itself helps.
My academic brain going, so how do you get out of there quicker? Where's the escape hatch? And there isn't one. I get that. So you mentioned that
you
thing.
You do what you can while you're there, and it doesn't, but it will release when it's supposed to release. Yeah.
That's very much one of these fascinating bits. And I've been there more than once. And one of our friends, Jill, was on one of the shows talking about that sort of the fallow times, right? When it is just like, look, it's just, whether it's a day, a week, a month, a year, 2 years, some of our most gifted teachers in the world have spent decades in this like wallow and then come back out.
This doesn't last that long. This might last a day or a few days. If you're there longer,
get a coach.
Or call a psychotherapist, you know. I mean, seriously, just then it may be an acute depression that really needs a medical professional, whether it's talk therapy or medicine. I don't care. But then it becomes, that's a different beast. Yeah. When you're in the realm, it can feel like the deepest, darkest, dramatic depression of your life, but it doesn't last long. It may last, it's intense, but it releases. If it's not releasing and it's been a few weeks, that's when I really recommend seeing a medical professional. Thank goodness they exist.
This is very true. And part of our fascinating offline conversation at the time is how many of the people in those professions have been coming for help in the last 2-3 years on the back of COVID and lockdown. Because
I hope a lot.
Yeah,
because getting help is good for us.
100%. And the old cliche, just do this, it'll work out, isn't going to shift it. We're in a very interesting time, I think. Hence pausing, stopping, and resetting for what's coming next as a collective, as a species. You know, you've been around coaching for longer than I was even aware of it, right? No, but in a good way. You know, it's like you've been there from the 90s doing this stuff, and I've been around it pretty late 90s in different ways. And they've been coaching different ways, but there's like, we're at a tipping point now where there's so much available, so much information's out there. And you've mentioned some amazing people who could be future guests and people listening in, getting hopefully massive value from you today. And I'm just sort of, one of the things I like to sort of say is, if there's one takeaway that they go, you know what, I heard Morgana, really fun, interesting lady, amazing ideas. And I remember her saying this. What's your biggest, like your sort of, your golden pill, your one takeaway you want to remember from today?
Change happens at the speed of safety. If something isn't changing, something isn't safe. And the first step is to uncover what that is. You're not a bad person. You're not a failure. You're actually a very self-loving person who's very successfully protecting yourself from something. And if you want change, find out what the danger is so you can neutralize it so that what you want is safe. Then it becomes very quick and easy to get it.
I love that. And is there a simple thing people can do to start that process?
I would send people over to my website, morganarae.com, and start with, I've got a 4-part video series to gently kind of introduce you to my process and get the gears working on your own. You can apply, I talk about money and a money monster, but seriously, you can apply whatever is stuck. It doesn't matter if it's money or love or health or whatever. The point is I wouldn't say love yourself more, because the problem is when we're told to love ourselves more, it becomes another thing we're not doing well enough, and then we punish ourselves with it. So I don't find that.
Simon, love yourself more.
Just another thing to do. So I don't find that very helpful. But what I do want is for you to have a better experience of life, and that's what the work is really, really, really about. So I've got hundreds of articles and videos where you just type in your question and find something in that. But I think that you asked for one simple thing. I would just say, go to my website and start with a video on the home page.
There you go.
And if it feels right to you, then explore some more.
There you go. And you've already answered the last question, which is how do they find out more about you? And that is morganarae.com. That, by the way, one of my biggest web marketing tips from like 20 years ago was like buyyourname.com. And people still don't do it, especially authors and coaches. It's really funny to me. They're like, that's amazing. You're like, just obvious. Do the obvious thing and be safe and take the steps and keep being a human. Keep exploring.
20 years ago, that wasn't the name of my website. But then 10 years ago, I noticed that the search term that was bringing everybody to my website was my name. So it seemed easiest to just turn that into my website name.
Yeah. And I also love, it's really funny, like, how much it was easy to get caught up in the last you and I in internet marketing years have been around like dinosaurs.
Yeah.
I was saying the day, I really miss one shopping cart. It used to work really well before advanced
back
things.
In the day.
Yeah, it's like a smart business coach said, no, you need to upgrade and use this other tool. And ever since didn't work as well. It's sort of the funny bits. Just keep things simple. And one shopping cart's still there. Interesting. We're going to go back to that again.
At the end of the day, everybody's telling you what you have to do and what the way is and the right thing to do. And I think that's there are principles, sure. And it's really, really good and useful to learn different modalities and options and technologies and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. Like, you can make money from virtually anything, doing it virtually anyway. And you can do the right stuff and fail spectacularly. So it's less about the what and so much more about just really clearing the blocks within yourself. Then it's much easier for you to know what the next step is for you.
Again, some lovely wise nuggets here from Morgana today. I'm really like we've covered lots of interesting ground, lots of interesting ways, and in a interesting rambling conversation, which is often a good sign of the fun stuff.
It's gone on for only 2 years now.
Give the day we have 24-hour conference calls. I sort of miss them and don't miss them. At one point we did, we were doing back-to-back calls nonstop for years, helping people. Again, learned lots of skills. Just fascinating to see where the ripples are, what goes on. I was just saying, is there anything else we haven't touched on that you want to say? Any sort of final thoughts before we wrap up for today, and hopefully the start of future conversations that they learn more about you and what you do and their own processing of the speed of safety? I love that idea.
Yeah. No, I think I'm cooked.
It's time to go have a cup of tea, have a pause, give your husband a hug.
Oh yeah. My husband has been neglected for 2 hours now, and he's looking antsy.
And he's a whole magical man that was getting paid to travel the world with tourism blogs and bits and pieces, which is a fascinating conversation and a fascinating time. So look, underneath all of this, I'm really present to this reminder about change happening at the speed of safety. I love that idea, and sort of feeling into where aren't I safe? Where is there not a safety? Where's a lack of safety? How can you make it safer?
Especially right now, like COVID and war and people we know being sick or dying. There's been a lot of stuff that has happened recently that is new to our life experience. And it's kind of been big and overwhelming. And so when I talk about, like, for example, the money monster, it's never actually about money. It's always about anything in your life experience that makes you unsafe is literally going to show up in your relationship with money. Anything that makes you feel unloved, unworthy, unsafe, or powerless. When circumstances change, stuff that used to work may stop working, and the world may feel an unsafe place, and you start to contract, which is natural. But when you contract, money tends to contract too. So what we want to do is we want to make your experience of life safe and happy, in a place you want to be again, so that you can expand again. And when you expand, the money expands too.
Thank you very much, Morgana. I've enjoyed catching up with you, and I've been a bit indulgent today, but I've enjoyed it, and hopefully you have too. We've covered some interesting ground, as we've heard. If you want to learn more about Morgana, morganarae.com. And for today, this is a time to pause, stop, and reset, and hopefully give you some food for thought on your journey. If you've enjoyed the show, make sure to go to Apple Podcasts, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and make a comment on what you heard, take some action on. Remember, you can find more resource information at pause.reset.com. There'll also be the links to Morgana's website there as well, and other bonus resources inside the portal. With that said, this is the end of Pause.Reset today. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye for now. Once again, I'm Simon Hedley. Thank you for listening to this episode of Pause, Stop, Reset, which is brought to you by the team at simonx.com and published by thesimpleidea.com. So you get maximum value, and to access all the bonuses and gifts, make sure to head to pause.reset.com, register and explore the portal. And if you're looking for great people, check out onesmartnetwork.com. If you've enjoyed the show, do give us a positive review, subscribe, and share this episode with friends. I can't wait to share our next episode with you. Till then, remember, you can always choose to pause, stop, reset.